Hi, I'm McNicol. I'm a professional acoustic guitarist, and these are 10 things that changed my career and how they happened. Competitions can be something of a controversial topic amongst musicians, and I often find myself in two minds about them myself, but I can't deny how helpful winning a national competition early in my career was for opening doors. The way I approached it was I looked at some of the people I admired and aspired to in my own musical area and wanted to discover some of the steps they'd made along their way. A couple of competitions seemed to keep on popping up, and these certainly weren't just general music competitions, they were niche and more relevant to my own musical world, in this case specifically guitar performance. So I decided to enter one called Guitarist of the Year, which was organised by Guitarist magazine. The process introduced me to people who would become integral in providing future opportunities, and this would have been the case whether I won it or not. It was just a super useful way to network and an important foot in the door. Having that accolade on my CV certainly allowed me to get gigs a lot easier and enabled some of the later things on this list to happen probably a lot quicker than they would have done otherwise. So, if this is an angle you want to explore, I'd suggest looking into any competitions that are relevant to your own musical area and see what opportunities they would provide even if you didn't end up winning. You could look into whether any of the artists you aspire to have been helped along the way by any competitions and see if they seem worth a try. Having the right people on your side to help with the workload can be so useful. And one of the most time-consuming elements I found as a professional musician was certainly reaching out to venues and trying to organise tours. Having an agent helped me so much at the start of my performing career, and definitely the reason I was able to embark on tours. They were able to work on finding new venues for me to play, negotiate better fees, and above all allow me precious time away from a keyboard writing emails. As always, having a personal introduction is so helpful, and I was introduced to the agent I still work with to this day via a venue I had performed at since the early days of my career. So if you're looking to work with an agent, I could definitely suggest finding out who works with the venues you already know, or of course find out who works with any acts you know. It's certainly better than an email out of the blue. Then once you've made contact, just make sure you have a decent EPK which shows your work as best as possible. Good quality videos both live and in the studio can help hugely, and in my own experience they've been invaluable. There can be so many benefits to partnering with relevant brands whose gear you might already use, or if you want to become an endorsee of a brand you've always wanted to work alongside. They'll most likely have an established fan base which, if you play your cards right, can become part of your own fan base. And of course, as time goes by, the relationship should develop into being a mutual one where there's a lot of cross-pollination of fans. One of the first brands I partnered with was a guitar builder who not only provided me with a beautiful new guitar, but also introduced me via their various newsletters to die-hard guitar fans. This was invaluable, of course, as it was such a good way to get my music in front of the right audience. Then, as time went on, I reached out to others, which included microphone companies, capper manufacturers, etc., all of whom have been so helpful. So how did I go about building these brand relationships? Well, it comes back to the personal introduction thing, really, and that competition I mentioned earlier led me to the first endorsement, and from then I'd gradually meet reps at festivals and guitar shows. It really is a case of the wider your net, the more opportunities and luck you'll end up finding along the way. I've never paid for a PR company myself, but have known others who have done exceptionally well from PR campaigns geared in the right direction. My own experience has been that press coverage can come naturally from some of the things I've already talked about. A knock-on effect of winning that competition was national and international press coverage, which led to features in magazines in Europe and the States, and certainly helped pave the way for my first international performances. But not only that, these features allowed me to build working relationships with the editors and writers, so I could keep them posted on future releases and projects, and these would in turn lead to album reviews and writing commissions. If you're interested in working with a PR company, I'd just suggest it's a very good idea to do some research into their track record with artists at a similar level to yourself, and have a clear idea what your end goals are, whether it's radio play or album reviews, etc. I suppose this is the closest a musician has to a shop front. Over the years I learnt and adapted to what people were responding to on my website and gradually started monetising more options via my online shop. Starting simple was good though, even if it's just a landing page which leads people to your socials. Then listing your gigs, selling physical products, digital downloads, etc. can be such a useful way to start building a more loyal fan base, and also gives you another valuable revenue stream which is room for growth as you develop as an artist. To give you an idea of what I've ended up with on my online shop, it's things like CDs, vinyl, transcriptions, backing tracks, online tutorials, commissions, and now even subscription options which have been becoming ever more popular since the explosion of sites like Patreon. Getting your releases up online via some form of digital distribution is something of a necessity these days. I did it passively to begin with and without a huge amount of thought, if I'm totally honest. I genuinely didn't think of it as a viable form of income really, and with the infamous rates per stream floating around, it's easy to see why people would think that. Gradually I started making more of the opportunities that were available, and a key moment for me was working with a label who specialised in Spotify distribution, and all of a sudden a whole world of possibilities became apparent. There are so many distributors to choose from now, some offering a flat annual rate for as many releases as you like, others a fee per release, so it'd be worth thinking about what kind of options suit your music and release plan. Then, if you know anyone who's been digging into the online distribution world, you could always see if there are any collaboration possibilities. I have friends and colleagues who earn their entire full-time income from Spotify alone, but they certainly have to work hard at it in order to do so. The international performance element of a career can be so fruitful in order to build fans in new parts of the world, along with generating publicity as you go. I've also found the time spent performing abroad to be some of the most inspiring times of my life. Festivals I found to be an excellent foot in the door, as they will already have an audience, and you could use a festival appearance as a springboard to organise a tour around those dates. But some of the most remarkable opportunities came my way in such a random fashion that it's difficult to pinpoint the exact journey. I'll give you an example about how I ended up touring China extensively. Firstly, I began noticing orders from China to my online shop, which I found odd as I'd never done anything over there, and quite a lot of Western sites where you discover my music are blocked. So I reached out to a guitarist and mentor of mine who had done a lot of work in China over the years, and I asked him what he thought was going on. He then introduced me to a professor of guitar at a Chinese music college, and then that professor introduced me to a guitar company over there. They then did some online investigating and found that people had been ripping my stuff from YouTube and putting it on the Chinese equivalents, and that ironically they were doing better over there than they were over here. So that led them to begin organising tours for me. So totally random in many ways, and a real who you know scenario, but further proof that if you put your work out there and make the most of the friendships you build along the way, amazing opportunities can present themselves. I remember someone once telling me that it's funny how the harder you work, the luckier you seem to get. Working with the right people on the right project has formed some of the most enjoyable parts of my career, but they've also opened doors to new opportunities I wouldn't have had on my own. These collaborations have taken the form of co-composing and arranging, production, education projects, the works. And the people I've collaborated with have included my peers and those who I've admired the greatest throughout my musical life. I think as well because I started out as a soloist, I found the opportunities to work with other musicians increasingly enjoyable. For example, when I was studying for diplomas with Trinity College, I reached out to an orchestral conductor who gave me some invaluable advice in terms of musicality, and having that feedback from someone who wasn't a guitarist themselves was refreshing, as it came from a totally different perspective. And then working with a producer on recording for the first time was a revelation to me. I never truly appreciated what an important role a producer has until I started working with one, and it's something I'd suggest everyone tries. Important, of course, to pick the right person, but when you get it right, the result can be totally transformative. The self-employed mentality of always looking for work and never saying no can be pretty exhausting. I found developing an annual plan really helped manage my time. Tours and festival appearances started landing in the same places each year, and I could plan any new releases around that. It would also help my agent know when to look into reaching out to new venues and when to start planning tours, etc. I've constantly been amazed at how far in advance venues and clubs book their schedules. Some work over a year and a half in advance, which can be pretty challenging to manage at first. But when you build a good network, you'll see how all the pieces in the puzzle can fit together in the best possible way. Now that title sounds a little vague, I know, but it's actually been one of the biggest revelations in how I work my career. When I first started releasing music, I'd be so keen on moving on to the next project that I'd really not make the most of what I'd created. Now I've been able to look back, take stock, and I'm able to make sure that everything I produce really works for me. It could be as simple as dividing any video content into shareable snippets, so the same video can work over months rather than just as a one-off. It's about introducing new fans to all of my work rather than just the new stuff, and that has fed into a lot of what I've talked about earlier in terms of website, online shop and distribution. So there we go, those are 10 things that changed my career and how they happened. I really hope you enjoyed that and find some of it useful. If you want to reach out and ask any other questions about anything I've discussed, please don't hesitate to get in touch.